Okay, so how do you save a document inside of 3D Studio Max? Saving a document is a little bit different than normal because there's more than one way to save something. Okay, you can do this file button over here. So I'm in Max 2017. I hate upgrading. I find it repulsive, and typically there's no real legitimate reason as to why you should update to the next version constantly. So I'm not an advocate for updating every single year. I just don't see it. If I'm using a hammer in construction, unless my hammer breaks, like that's the hammer I want. Or if a new model comes out and it's gonna be almost like a Swiss Army knife or something, like that would be a reason for me to upgrade. But really, for the stuff that I do, I actually have another copy of 3D Studio Max 2011. And I don't really see a major difference between 2017 and 2011. And I don't like 2018 because of Arnold. I'm just not a fan of that rendering system. It might be because I'm not used to it. I might be a fan next year. We're in 2019. But I'm that guy who hates technology. I hate upgrading. I hate the latest and greatest. I just, buying a new, system. I really love my laptop. Like, I love my laptop. It's so good to me. But, you have new tech always coming out, new hardware. You just can't keep up with it, and I just can't get on that wagon. I'm still on an iPhone 5, and that's just my opinion. So when dealing with saving objects, it's actually different from one copy of 3D Studio Max to another. My copy of Max 2011, this button up here didn't exist. It actually says File, Edit, Tools, Group. Now, I believe the new copy of Max 2018 actually says File, Edit, Tools, Group again. So I think they took this button out. But this right here is your File button. So if you hit File, Save, it will just save right on top. And actually, that was a dumb decision because I had stuff that I was using that for. That's not good. Oops. Well. I think I got a backup copy of it anyways. It doesn't matter. So I've hit File, Save. If it's the first time that it saves, it's actually going to give you this window if it's the first time. So I would recommend, setting your file location. All right. So let's go ahead and come over here, and I'm just going to go to my temp folder for a second. Okay, and I'm going to make a new folder structure for my project. Like, how do you save files in 3D? Well, what I would recommend is coming up with your project name or your client. Okay, so this client is important. This is going to be, who you're doing the job for right here. So let's just call it clients. Whoops, let's spell it right. Okay, call it clients. Next, we're going to come over here and we're going to do so who's this client? So let's just say it's YHWH Games. Okay, so what project is this? Well, this is actually a tutorial. Okay, so that's the name of the project. So now what are we going to do? So we have this base mesh in here, right? So we can start naming our stuff, but let's just go ahead and complete our folders out. So this is going to be, I always do this _final. And this is always at the top because, like, if you're on a network and you're sharing with other people, let's say you're having to create a whole bunch of foliage assets. Well, you might have an intern that it was told, hey, go in the foliage folder and find all of the final assets of every single thing and make sure we have an OBJ or an FBX or both. Right? So that they don't want to sift through your thousands of unnamed project files, character 01, foliage 01. Like, nobody does that, right? You've got to be specific in this industry for efficiency. Okay, so you have a final folder. You also have a draft folder. We have a textures folder. We have an animation folder. Okay, so what is this draft? I've also seen it called modeling. Okay, you can do that too. That modeling folder is your draft. So you can double click in here and then save. But For every folder that we have, also we're going to have rendering. Rendering is important. For every folder that we have, we're also going to have additional stuff within these folders. So if we go to animation, we also need an export, because this is the stuff that's going to the engine. Okay, now should that be in Final? It can be. It can be. So if you want to come over here in Final and you want to do anim, or how about we do this? We name everything properly. We go export anim. We do another folder and we do export static. We do another folder, export what would be another good example here? Like skeletal, I guess. Now, what's the difference between animation and skeletal? Honestly, it depends on the studio. That's the real answer. So I've seen some people do an export animation, and animation and skeletal is actually the same thing. Okay, so for this example, I just actually take animation out and we'll just do skeletal. All right. Now, what about textures? Right. So textures, you're going to have special format here. You're actually going to do something called sculpt. Okay. This is your sculpt data. So basically, your ZBrush files or your Mudbox files, they should go here. But we also are going to have to do something else. Depending on the situation, you always want to leave somebody else that information, like, hey, where am I going to find my high-res files? So we're going to do 2048. We're going to do 1024. We'll do 512. Okay? So we'll do it like that. And then we just save each one. Now, I don't recommend having all three of these unless you intend on creating all three of these. So if this character is only going to use 512 textures, well, then I would remove 2048 and 1020, or just take them out, right? Just get them out of there so there's no confusion. And also inside this textures folder, this is where you put your PSDs. You don't put your PSDs inside these guys. These are for your targets. I've seen some studios use PNGs for their texture files. I know that's done more primarily on mobile, but always save your image files as targas, TGA files. Okay, so what about rendering? Rendering is a whole different conversation. It's a whole different beast. It's not like, I'm not going to cover that in here. I'll give you some basics, maybe for presentation stuff and just dry composites, but this is like a whole career, just so people understand. That's how big of a deal this is. So what you can do is you can just come over here and, diffuse is the old name. So you can do albedo underscore diffuse if that's what you want to do. It's either one. Okay, you want to do your ambient occlusion, so you can do AO. I usually do a fall off pass, so I can do a fall off. There's an environment pass. Whoops. So you can do an environment. You have lighting passes. What else do we have? There's HDRI passes, which is a little bit different than lighting. It's similar, but not the same. Okay, and then on and on. You can do specular, you can do roughness, you can do metallic, whatever. These is all this list of stuff. And yes, I do know that metallic and roughness are essentially the same thing, but it's a checkbox, and I understand you can do things with masks. So, add all of these different type of functions and keep them separate. And this is for long-winded render passes, like anything that's over one frame. That's when you do something like this. Okay, so if you're just trying to do a basic image composite, you can just put your PSD in there and call it a day. Okay, modeling. Modeling is your draft folder. So basically what you're doing is you're moving from your 2D turnaround into this really dope 3D character, which essentially is this guy here. All right. So if we do naming convention, how are we going to name this character? Well, I know that this character is going to get a skin eventually. A skin is the process of binding the 3D character model to a bone structure. So, and that's a different lesson. We're not going to cover that in here. But because I know it's going to be skinned, then we're going to mark it as an SK. SK is actually skeletal mesh. The first two letters for for most things are going to be either skeletal or static meshes. Now you can do architecture, right? How we're actually naming this, and we can actually name this stuff in here just for classification of things, right? You have actors, which is actually an SK. Okay, don't name these things like this. I'm just trying to help you with abbreviations. Okay, so you have static props, which is ST. Okay, now we have dynamic props, believe it or not, this is still going to get an SK on it. Now, it's going to be a little bit more involved than this. If you're a different type of studio and you want to call it, dynamic props, you can call it DP if you want to. Also, we have environments. So we're going to call this ENV, like that. The next thing that we're going to look at is architecture. Okay, and then we're going to do ARCH, like that. And we're going to do, the last one is transportation. Now, I have seen transportation marked as a skeletal mesh because it has a bone structure in it, but you can do VH for vehicle. Okay. This is just the starting nomenclature for the first two, or for the first bracket and then underscore. We're going to look through each one of these. Next, we have character. So it's an actor, right? So we have SK. Let's just go ahead and do this in lowercase. SKCH. So we know it's a skeletal character. Is it a human? Is it a dog? Is it a bull? What kind of thing is it? So either mark this as a character. Well, why don't we just do a bull here in a minute? We'll just do an animal or something. Okay, so is it male or female? So you can say it's a human male, okay, underscore. Is it a hero or a mob? Right? That's one. This part of the category or categorization has to deal with the studio. I've also seen HROM. It's a hero male. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're looking for a male or a female. Actually, it does. It absolutely does matter. I've also seen CHM. It's a character male. Okay. Now, why does it matter? Because, like, let's say you're in the middle of working on a project. Someone hands you off a blueprint and says, hey, I need you to model this character. And you're like, oh, okay, does it have a name? Well, no, not yet. We're still deciding on a name. So in the meantime, you've got to be able to come up with a designation, because what if it takes 6 to 8 weeks for them to come up with a name? Some places it actually takes that long to do stuff because they're going through market testing and doing research. They want to know the best name possible for a character. All right, so you just need to make sure you're abiding by the naming convention of the studio. If the studio doesn't have a naming convention, be the one to provide that information and make the scene assembler's day a little easier, okay? So we've got a character as a hero male, or you can do human male underscore hero, HRO. What's another thing as an enemy? It's not ENM, it would be MOB for mob, okay? What else do we have? We have the name of the individual, and then the outfit, and then the iteration of the outfit. So that has to do with the copy. So you wouldn't actually put it there, you actually put that here. Okay, so let's just copy this name for a minute, okay? And we'll just do an alternative example. So this is going to be a human female, and she is not a hero, she is a mob, she is an enemy, okay? So we just resort this. Let's just do another one real quick. Let's do another one, and we're going to call this boss. Okay, it's a human male boss. Okay, let's just do another one. We'll call this NPC. Okay. Now, just to help you guys out, this hero typically has to do with the player. It doesn't always 100% mean that, but it does typically mean that that's a thing. So let's put the NPC as a female too, right? And you can see how the naming convention is sorting things out. It's listing things really nice and clean and neat. So you have hundreds and hundreds of files. It's so easy to find the thing that you need. Okay, so now let's deal with architecture. Architecture is a little bit different. So let's name this properly, ARCH. So typically you want to define the architecture primarily by, well, is it an interior? I'm sorry, is it a commercial, residential, or agricultural? I say industrial, but there's both. So let's say architecture. Let's say commercial. Okay, and is this an interior building or an exterior building? So we're going to do EXT for exterior. So that means typically, in a video game setting or a movie, if the players never enter into this, it's just a building that's in the backdrop or something. We're just doing an architecture, commercial building. It's an exterior building, and we'll put the name of this building, okay, and we'll call it 00. Notice everything's got 00 on the end. So let's go ahead and do another one. This one we're going to do residential. RES is fine. This is going to be interior. Let's say it's the apartment complex that our hero lives at. So let's just call it, we'll just say name, and of course in 00, okay? And then last one, or we'll do a couple more. How about we do that? My good friend Scott reminded me that military buildings are very specific. So you can use MIL for military. Okay, so that's fine. Exterior building. What happens if it's interior and exterior? Well, then name it by the exterior, and then you can actually put or even better would be EXTINT. So this is showing that, hey, when we name it, it's got both here. Military, exterior, interior. The name of the building, and then 00. And then of course we can do an industrial. We'll just do another exterior, interior, and we can say instead of com, it'll be IND. Okay, there we go. So that's a nice, tidy naming convention here. Okay, so what about environment stuff? I'm gonna skip dynamic props for a second and go into environments. Okay, so let's name this END. Okay, there's 4 types of environment. There's the terrain, there's the skybox, there's the water, and there's foliage. Okay, that's primary or 4 primary types of foliage. So let's just type it FOL. Okay, ENV FOL for foliage, and then you want to do the species of tree, right? So if this is a tree, we're going to say conifer. And then 00. Okay. So let's do this again. And so this time around, instead of foliage, we're going to do skybox. ENV sky. Now, is there a circumstance where you would actually do a 3D sky? Yeah, nowadays it's very common to do, but it's typically done in Unreal or the game engine of choice. I don't want to be biased here. So ENV sky, right? And then I would name it according to the cloud type. So cirrus clouds, right? I believe that's a type. Okay. Now, what about time of day or location? Like, I think that's up to the studio, right? So if we were doing somewhere in New Zealand sky, right? Cirrus clouds or whatever, something like that would probably work out for you. Just rename all of this stuff. Okay, another one. So let's do terrain. Now, this terrain stuff is typically done in your engine as well nowadays, but if you're working on a movie, then it isn't done in an engine, is it? Well, unless you're rendering out of the engine. Okay, so you definitely want to name the location. So whether this is So let's just put location. And I would also say, I'm going to do terrain and I'm going to do long lat. Okay. Now, why long lat? Longitude and latitude, right? Nowadays, video games are getting so huge. You need to be able to look at a map objectively, you know, on a piece of paper or, you know, on your laptop on an image, and actually have a latitude and longitude for a specific location. Like Final Fantasy 15 is so large. I wouldn't be surprised if they were using this. So just make sure that you're specifying the location, the longitude and latitude, and then okay, now are we talking about north by northwest, giving the degrees or whatever, and say okay, well we're actually talking about Los Angeles, right? So let's just look at this for a second. L.A. How about we do Los Angeles, longitude and latitude. There we go. So that's how we're actually gonna put it out. I don't know if your naming convention will take that. Huh, it actually took it. Well, there you go. So let's just remove long lat here. Okay. And of course the location name. So in this case it would be Los Angeles, and then maybe 00 because you don't know what else is going to be here. Let's say this is a restaurant name. So let's just do city name and then actual place. So yeah, it's going to be a bit winded, but who cares? You're supposed to be helping out other people, not necessarily yourself. So if you've got more than Final Fantasy 15 map, I'm telling you, I'm fairly certain they're going to be using a lot lat coordinate, because every single area in that game, and I've checked, there's like virtually no seams on the terrain from going from one quadrant of the map to another. That game took a lot of love to make. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so the last thing is water. Okay, so I would do the same kind of thing for your water. For whatever reason, if you're water specific, like maybe you're doing like a lake, or because if you're just doing a general ocean, well then you're going to use a tileable map, and things are going to be a little bit done a little bit differently. But like if you're doing like a pond or a lake or something that your player can travel on, I would make sure I would use this system too. And we can simply do this. How about we do this? We'll just do how about we do like a Houston Lake. Houston Lake. This video is running a little long, but that's okay. Oh, it's actually called Lake Houston. Oh, dope. Lake Houston. Longitude. Here we go. So this is Houston, and we'll do this one. We'll call this Lake Houston. Okay, and let's get rid of that, and this is going to be H2O. Okay, that's your water. And of course we'll get rid of this. And there, that's our coordinates. Okay. Let's just go ahead and call this, I know we had city name, but just for future, Los Angeles. Okay, and notice that just so we're all aware, this 3.052, this longitude and latitude for LA, this is just generic LA. I didn't actually find a specific place and mark that's location. This is just the LA. And then Lake Houston over here, this is the long lat. So I just try to be as specific as possible. And this is not going to be, of course, according to real world. It's going to be according to your game world. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so vehicles. Vehicles is going to be a little easier to deal with. VH, land, sea, and air, right? So land. It's a land let's just do air because I know about the Black Hawk. So H, this is air. So I'm going to do what kind of air vehicle? Well, it's a helicopter. And specifically, it's a UH-60 Black Hawk. Zero, zero. Just like that. Okay. So what about a transport? Let's just do this again. This is land. And let's just say car. Lamborghini. So I'm just going to put Lambo. Countach. Okay, now what about a year? So let's do 73, 1973. Okay. Now I've also seen it done, 1973, and this is a bad year. I don't think that they had a Countach back then, but I don't really care at the moment. Okay, I've seen it done like this as well. So year, make, and model, but you can do model, year, and make. Just depends on your studio. Let's move on. Okay, and then I don't really know too much about aquatic vehicles, so land, sea, and air. Okay, let's just say, what is it? Or it's a yacht. Yacht. And then make, model. I'll just put year in here. Just like that. Okay, so there's your transportation. So notice I left out the dynamic prop and the static prop. That's because the naming convention on these things are a bit of a mess. It's just so many different things. So like, if you're dealing with a table, so it's a static prop. It's furniture. Does it have to do with the environment? Yes, but what if it's outside? So just try to keep this as short as possible. Okay, so it's a static prop. You can call it furniture. Okay, furniture, and then table, 00. Now I know there's more to tables. You can actually call it a name because IKEA has, the Flumenfirmen or whatever, right? So just do the best you can and listen to the scene assembler or the project manager and let them know, hey, what do you want me to call this? Help me be specific. How does this name sound? But then once you establish a name, don't change the name or the naming convention order because you're going to drive everybody crazy if you keep changing names over and over and over again. Trust me, I made that mistake too many times. Okay, so what about static props, or I'm sorry, dynamic props? So essentially, let's use a gun for an example. Okay, so I'm going to do a dynamic prop, but I'm going to be specific as a weapon. Okay, so I can use DP in the beginning, but it's definitely a weapon. Now, what kind of weapon? Well, it's a gun. Well, is it single-handed or is it double-handed? In other words, is it like a carbine? Is it a rifle or is it a pistol? Right? I've also seen it done light, medium, and heavy. I've also seen it done just according to rate of fire. So let's just do pistol. Okay, and this is called an M9. Okay, that's the name of the gun. I've also seen this. Okay, they add the word ranged inside. Gun, pistol, let's just say Uzi. Okay. What else can I show you? I have seen also this. Melee instead of ranged. I've also seen, okay, is it a single-handed melee weapon or is it a double-handed melee weapon? Okay, so you can do 1H, you can do, it's one-handed, knife. What kind of knife is it? It's a balisong. Butterfly knife, okay. What else do we have? We can do... Now, what's interesting about what I have just done here, I'm being very specific to the fact that all of these are skinned meshes. A balisong has animation on it, okay? But let's say a Bowie knife, it's a fixed blade. So a fixed blade, it's not going to get a DP on it. It's actually going to get a static mesh on it. Okay, static mesh in the knife Bowie. So in this circumstance, the scene assembler is going to get pissed because he's like, well, where the hell did the Bowie knife go? Because he's looking for this, but it's actually static. So that's why I said you got to be careful, and that's where this stuff gets really messy. So even if it's a weapon, I would just designate it as such. Okay. And just put it all in one place for your scene assembler to find. But is it still a dynamic prop? Yeah, absolutely. It's still dynamic. It still has a skeletal mesh on it. It's still a skeletal mesh prop. It's a dynamic prop. Okay. Just remove all of this stuff. That's pretty much it, guys. We have our static prop here. Yeah, we do. Okay. Headsets. Outside lamps. The molding on your house and your floorboard and on your crown. Is that considered architecture? Absolutely it is. Is it still considered furniture? Sorta. It's just you have to listen to what your guy's telling you. You have to listen and pay attention. So let's move on. Let's deal with our character. So our character's name, he's CHHRO name base mesh. Okay. So let's just take out this here, and I'm just going to call him base mesh, and we're going to put him inside of this folder here. Like technically, this name of this folder should match this guy. It should be the same name, and it should be designate as this is the copy. So I'm going to show you how this works. So I'm just going to drop this in here and hit save. The name of the file, the name of the folder, and the mesh name should be the same right here. Just like that. All three of these objects are the same exact name. The name of the mesh, the name of the file, the name of the folder. Okay, and so like let's say I do something to him and I give him some armor, or I change something, I tweak something, and I made a new change. Just hit the plus button. By hitting the plus button, what it does is it copies and makes an iteration. Don't change the iteration name here, because that iteration name will change in the engine. Okay, this is the amount of copies that has been done. Now, when you copy something in Max, it actually gives you a 3 padding, or I'm sorry, a additional number. So even if this was 0, not 00, right? If I copy it over like this, it's going to call it 01. Oh, no, it is 3 padding. my bad. Okay, so then just, manually change it to the second padding. Okay, so this is going to be 0, 0. And this is going to be 0, 1. Now, if you're doing foliage, like just if you do a grass clump, I would absolutely make it 3, if not 4 padding. So the foliage name would be 0, 0, 0, 0. Because you're going to copy it so many times, it's just going to copy and increase in number. Okay. And I think that's pretty much about it. I think I've really worn this lesson out. So I hope you guys have a good afternoon. Shalom.